World War II is remembered as one of the most devastating events in history. It is estimated that about 72 million people were killed during the war. Of these, about 40 million were civilian casualties. Concentration camps can be blamed for a large percent of these civilian deaths. Over 6 million European Jews were killed in these camps, but other prisoners included German communists, socialists, gypsies, and homosexuals. About 20,000 camps were created between 1933 and 1945. Prisoners were considered enemies of the Nazi regime. Men, women, and children were stripped from their homes, forced into cattle cars, and taken to a destination unknown to them. Once they arrived, they were separated from their families, examined to determine whether they should live or die, and immediately forced into labor. The conditions of these camps were on a level of horror never before seen in the world. Lack of proper hygiene and sanitation facilities caused disease to spread like wildfire. Most prisoners were forced to work over 10 hours a day. By the end of the war, the horrors of these camps were truly recognized. Hundreds of German officers were responsible for these crimes against humanity. Many officers fled or committed suicide after World War II. Of all those involved, only 22 were tried in the Palace of Justice during the Nuremberg trials beginning in 1945. The final results of the trials sentenced 12 to death and 7 to prison time. 3 were acquitted of their crimes completely. Of the 12 sentenced to death, only 10 were hanged, after 1 fled and 1 committed suicide. Throughout the trial, the true atrocities of war crimes were brought to light. These were crimes that had never before been seen in the world. It were these very trials that inspired a turning point in the prosecution of war crimes internationally. Before the 1864 Geneva Convention, war victims were only protected by parties who signed mutual treaties. In Geneva, Switzerland in 1864, a convention was created to protect soldiers on both ends of the field. It was signed and adopted by representatives of 12 governments. This convention finally blazed the trail for humanitarian law. It allowed extended care to wounded and sick soldiers and mutual treatment of medical vehicles. It was strongly influenced by and created through the Red Cross. In 1929, further conventions were developed. While the creation of these laws greatly protected soldiers incapable of fighting, it did little to protect those soldiers who were taken prisoners of war or to protect innocent civilians. Since World War II consisted of some of the worst treatment of both of these, 2 additional conventions were added shortly after. The Geneva Conventions accepted in 1949 are as follows. First Convention, to protect the wounded and sick members of military in the field. Second Convention, to protect wounded, sick, and shipwrecked members of the Navy as well as the military. Third Convention, to protect prisoners of war. And Fourth Convention, to protect civilians in times of war. These additional conventions have caused the punishment of war crimes to become increasingly harsh. It took 85 years for the humanitarian laws to finally protect prisoners of war and civilians. Since 1949, there have been even more protocols added to the conventions. Today, war crimes are generally punished by death or long-term imprisonment. War crimes must be reported to the International Criminal Court, or the ICC. It was founded on July 1, 2002, and is supported by 108 countries. Crimes must include either war crimes themselves, crimes against humanity, or genocide. Many specific crimes can be included, but all are recognized as a crime against human life. Had it not been for the horrific treatment of the innocent civilians and helpless soldiers during World War II, these laws to protect human life may never have been created.